Hello and welcome to today's program. I am honored to be joined by Katie Riley of Fidelity Investments as we talk through the evolving landscape for employers and employees. So, by way of background, I am a financial advisor that specializes in retirement plans at Raymond James. And I saw the registration list, a lot of names I recognize, some of which I've met in our work, our collaborative work that Raymond James has done with the Society of Human Resource Management. So we really understand the challenges that HR faces, and really, honestly, that companies are facing to meet the needs of your employees in an environment where it just seems the pace of change is exponential, right? Katie and I, during our multiple prep sessions for today's conversation, were joking that we've seen 2 decades worth of change in the last 5 years. And what she's going to be referring to today as Fidelity is a partner of Raymond James. We have mutual clients, and we really leverage a lot of their research and thought leadership because they do touch so many different types of individuals. They get the employer voice, the employee voice, the investor voice, the HR voice. And all of those things coming together, we're going to rely upon a lot of the work that they have done, speaking to you and your peers about what employees are demanding today and how we can evolve the benefits programs without breaking the bank, so to speak. So how do we do more with less? And how do we reposition what we have currently to meet the needs of our employees? So with that, I'd love to turn it over to Katie. It's going to be a dialogue. Feel free to throw questions into the Q&A box, and I'll make sure that we're covering it during the course of the program. Just some logistics. If you are attending, obviously for the super important information, but also for the SHRM PDC code, you can expect to get a follow-up email from me with that code if you've stayed for 50 minutes. We will also be sharing slides and the 2025 Workplace Outlook piece that Fidelity has put together. So there's a lot of great tangibles. As you're listening today, I would encourage you not to take copious notes, but kind of take it in and think about one or two action items. I am in your seat very often where I'm in an educational setting, and we want to make the most out of your time. We realize that time is valuable. It's the one asset that we can't get more of. So thank you for spending it with us, and we're looking forward to making a good use of it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm really excited at the chance to share with you some of the bodies of research that Fidelity has conducted over the last year and a half, and sort of the culmination of all of them as to what it means for employers and what it means for employees as we are all navigating these changing and pretty uncertain times in the workforce. So thrilled to be able to share this with you. Hope it's very valuable. And looking forward to hearing your comments, your questions, and again, keeping this an open dialogue with Kristen to make sure that you are getting the most out of the time you're spending with us today. So again, my name is Katie Riley. I am part of the thought leadership team within Fidelity in our workplace segment. So what is thought leadership? I feel like this is a pretty broad term. A lot of people have different definitions. Let me give you a little insight as to what that is at Fidelity. So we are looking at Fidelity data within my team. We're looking at about 40 million accounts, customer accounts, and about 28,000 client accounts. And we are digging through this data, doing some research, talking to experts within the field and within Fidelity to leverage all of these insights and understand where there are new opportunities, where there are new ideas for products and solutions, what points of view we need to be bubbling up and sharing with all of the folks who are leading organizations and really making the decisions as to how the workforce is engaging with their total rewards packages, how we're engaging employees in the office and out. And so we try to package all of these insights into papers, articles, research reports that you can leverage to make sure that you are making the most informed decisions possible for your organization. At Fidelity, we really think of thought leadership as a strategic asset for our business, just in terms of the value that it can provide based on that robust set of data and insights that we share. We are frequently conducting sort of primary research within our own organization and within the organizations, the companies, and the employees that have accounts with Fidelity, looking at topics from things like plan design to investment lineup, understanding employee sentiment, talent trends, behavioral science and how that's incorporated into the workplace. And then we look to amplify those insights through storytelling, participating in events like this, advocating with policymakers when we see that there's an opportunity to affect change at a larger scale. And of course, bringing this to media, directly to our clients, really just trying to help ensure that everyone has a pulse on what's happening right now. And again, is prepared for what's on the horizon to make the most informed decisions that they can. And one thing that I know on my team from my work and conversations with clients is that over the last few years, all of your plates have grown, your responsibilities have grown pretty significantly. And we know that our jobs now entail much more than just retirement and benefits, right? We're thinking about things like workplace safety. We're thinking about employee well-being, their total well-being. We're thinking about maybe inclusion and how that shows up in the workplace. And so from a thought leadership perspective, we have really expanded our scope of topics to make sure that we're covering all of these things that matter most for you so that you can deliver the best experience and the best total rewards packages to your employees. So I'm excited today to walk you through our recent report. As Kristen mentioned, it's called Navigating Shifting Sands. We released it just earlier this year. And along the topic of how quickly things change, I think there are even things in this report from just a handful of months ago that feel almost outdated now with the pace of change. So keep your eyes open because in early 2026, we will have a new updated, fresh perspective for you, but really looking forward to sharing with you what we have today. So our research report that I'll be sharing today really digs into data that we're hearing from our clients, weak signals that we've identified, what we're hearing from employees about what they want from their employers. And at the highest level, as we were putting this report together, the theme really arose of shifting sands, because what we are seeing in these insights really point to some early signals of foundational changes, essentially in the social contract between employers and employees. We were really focused on the areas related to employees themselves, to the dynamic within the workplace, how that's shifting, to the way that data and technology are shaping how we work, and of course, incorporating those external factors like the economy and the political landscape, all of which are coming into work with our employees. So through all of that distillation, we created this pretty robust report that touches on some of what we find and believe to be the most imperative topics for employers to be thinking about as you're making decisions about engaging your employees and creating a package of benefits that really serves the employees that you have. So let's dive right in to some of the insights, and we'll talk about those shifting sands. So in this body of work, we really identify 4 key workplace trends that are driving decision makers for employees and employers alike, that are driving the decisions that we're making related to, again, engaging our employees and creating packages and workplace experiences to enhance the experience and the outcomes for those that we're serving. We'll start here with the pendulum of power. During COVID, I think we saw that there was a pretty heavy swing to the employees' favor. Employees were really leaving the workforce at high rates, jumping ship, joining new employers. And what we've seen in that sort of post-COVID landscape is that this pendulum of power has swung back into the favor of employers. However, we are still balancing some very uncertain challenges. So just to touch on a couple of them here, workplace polarization is on the rise. As we talked about the economy and politics really coming into work now with employees, we're seeing that employees and consumers are taking a much more critical eye toward both actions and inactions of their employers. And it's really putting companies in a pretty tough position on whether or not to take a stand on these hot button issues or to remain silent. And we're really seeing this uptick in employees wanting their employer to take a stand on things, but there is a double-edged sword here for employers, and we know that you are feeling the constraints and the kind of undue burden of having to make statements or commentary on what's happening across the landscape, political, social, et cetera. We're also seeing, in addition to some of those major polarization challenges, employers starting to test new forms of technology that the workplace is maybe a little bit afraid of, but also very excited about. So for instance, the incorporation of AI technologies and the strategic testing of those within our organizations to identify opportunities while balancing the risk and reward of this. I think this is an area where employees are feeling quite a bit of uncertainty right now and potentially a little bit of threat to their positions. And I think this especially is impacting folks who are newer to the workforce. One thing Fidelity is really thinking about right now is how to ensure that with the incorporation of AI technology and what that means for some of those more mundane or entry-level tasks, how do we ensure that we're preparing our talent, our next generation of talent, not only to be able to utilize those resources and technologies, but also to make sure that they're getting the education and the experience that they need to progress in their organization and to do well. Alongside that sort of technology area, we know that cybersecurity, this is not listed here, but I'd be remiss not to add it, is a major concern and a renewed focus for all security leaders. For about 80% of security leaders within organizations have shared with us that they are very concerned about the increasing sophistication of cyber threats that they're receiving. There was a recent report that showed that nearly 40% of C-suite leaders have actually suffered a cyber attack within the last year. So these attacks are on the rise. They are more sophisticated than they've ever been. And this means that organizations are really having to double down on their investment in areas of spending related to AI and related to data security. And at the same time that we're worrying about those investments, we are feeling some real dual cost pressures here, both from increased prices from vendors, often due to the interest in inflationary environment. And then on the other side of that, we're really seeing consumers pushing back with their spending, tightening their purse strings because of economic uncertainties, because of inflationary pricing that they're experiencing. And it's putting a lot of employers in a really difficult position. We can't continue to pay more for our vendors without raising the end cost to our consumers, but consumers are pushing back and saying they won't spend it. So certainly recognizing again that we are in a position right now of turbulence and uncertainty. I think a really interesting fact is that the Fed in one of their latest workforce reports actually cited the word uncertainty 80 times. So we are feeling it across the board and hopefully working through it together with as many data-backed insights and decision-making as possible.
Yeah, and actually, Katie, if I can interject there. So in the next few weeks, the beginning of September, it's 401k day, right? The Friday after Labor Day is the hallmark holiday of 401k day. And in anticipation of that, we've been doing programs for sponsors, but we also have an employee-facing deck that's not branded about fighting price pressures and how you can squeeze more out of your paycheck. So that's something that is a follow-on to this, we're happy to share.
It's a fantastic addition. Speaking of employees and financial challenges, this is something that is very top of mind for Fidelity. We are looking at the data from our participants and seeing how folks are feeling, if they're making informed decisions, how they're interacting with the educational resources and tools. And one thing that we do feel very concerned about is financial literacy trends across the US. So less than half of US adults have strong financial literacy skills, and we know this has an impact on all areas of their life. More than half of Americans right now are living paycheck to paycheck. And that has only grown in recent years because of the inflationary environment, the cost of living increases. So folks are really tightening their budgets where they have budgets But the folks without those strong financial literacy skills are really the ones that are feeling the most challenge. These are often folks who are lower income and don't have as much saved, either in terms of emergency short-term savings or long-term and retirement savings. They are also more likely to be experiencing these inflationary cost pressures with the cost of goods and services. One area that Fidelity is really focused on is around emergency savings and enabling short-term savings so that employees can cover immediate expenses and also be able to balance those long-term retirement savings. Something that we'll be releasing in just about a week. We've got a new emergency savings piece that we'll be sharing about leadership. And our research has actually shown that individuals that don't have adequate emergency savings are 5 times more likely to be taking loans and withdrawals from their retirement plans.
Wow.
We know it's a huge area of concern for employers right now. We're hearing it in every single conversation. And we can really link it directly back to that lack of adequate emergency savings. It's such a hard cycle to break when folks are living paycheck to paycheck and don't feel that they have enough to put aside, let alone pay for their immediate expenses. So the opportunities that are available to employers to start investing in this area of short-term savings and emergency savings is something that we really believe in the power of, and the power to not only enhance financial well-being, but also to really allow employees a shift in focus at work. So yeah, please.
This is a topic that we're going to get back to at the end of the program. I mean, I know we could spend an hour on financial wellness, and we often do, but there's a lot that Katie's going to cover today. We'll hit on some actionable items as we wrap up the program.
Absolutely. And just a couple of points around that financial stress and what that does to employees while they're at work. There was a recent report that showed that an individual loses between 5 and 10 hours of productivity each week due to financial stress. So those who are feeling the most financial stress are losing more than an entire business day of work. And that is equating to $183 billion in lost productivity revenue across the US workforce. So huge financial implication for employers and a huge mental burden on employees that they're bringing this into work and actually losing their ability to focus on the work at hand and go above and beyond for their organization. So speaking of well-being, again, another major priority and focus area for employers that is coming up in many of the conversations we're having, really looking at all aspects of total well-being, looking at life, at health, at finances, and at work. And we know that each of these areas of total well-being have a reciprocal effect on each other. So each of them is influencing the others and can easily drag someone down, just as we mentioned around mental well-being and the strand right to financial well-being. Employees are really asking for more help in this area, particularly around mental support, mental and emotional health support. And I think this is a really interesting time to be alive because what we're seeing right now from employees is something that we have not seen before. Where we used to define success and ambition in the workplace as accruing titles and increasing your pay and getting all of these accolades in the workplace, we're actually seeing post-COVID this massive switch to how employees are defining success. And what we're seeing them define as success is the ability for them to have work-life balance, the ability of them to focus on personal aspirations and experiences like travel and time with their loved ones, and really gaining as much personal fulfillment as possible, and also feeling like the work that they are doing is meaningful and value aligned to their life. So really, again, this shifting dynamic at work where folks aren't coming in just looking to climb the corporate ladder, they are looking to get something fulfilling from work that they can bring into their personal life as well.
That is so interesting, and I know that we've all heard about the opportunities and challenges of a multi-generational workforce. I heard a stat recently that in the next 10 years, more than 50% of workers are going to have a younger boss that they're reporting to, right? So it's like the dynamics are shifting, and we really do need to appreciate and understand what each employee is looking for. I mean, at the end of the day, the commonality is they need a paycheck, right? We're doing this for work, but that's not the only thing. And I think the HR's challenge, I know that everyone on this call is very well aware of all the things that we're talking about. This is not, while this is interesting, while the trends are changing, you're living this, right? You know it in some ways better than Katie and I. I think the challenge is taking these messages and how do you get leaders in your organization, both HR leaders, but then also strategic leaders to dive into these trends and really make it a corporate or organizational priority to make sure that you're addressing these needs.
Most definitely. Yeah. Just along that line of leadership and the changing role of leadership, one thing I'd love to call out from this final section here is around frontline leaders and the skills that they need to manage the workforce of tomorrow. We know that frontline leaders are often kind of the culture carriers in an organization, or they can be culture detractors based on how they are feeling about the work in the organization. But over the last decade, their role has expanded so significantly, not just from analytical work and being good at their job and good at coaching, but also to encompass a lot of socio-emotional labor and understand how to support their employees through life changes, through mental health crises, through family crises, and emotional and financial challenges. And those managers, those frontline managers are telling us we do not feel prepared. We don't have the resources. We haven't had the training. We're not sure how to address these head first, or we don't know what resources our organization offers that we can then share with our direct employees to make sure that we are giving them the resources and tools to success. This group of managers, the frontline managers, actually show the highest levels of burnout across the entire organization. And that's across employer size, that's across industry, really looking just at those who are at that early stage of frontline leadership. They are struggling very significantly, and we know what an important role they play in an organization. So another area to lean in and really ensure we're supporting and preparing those individuals. So all of this that you all are knowing and living, what does it mean for how that shows up in a thoughtful total rewards package? How do we address some of these major challenges through what we are offering in terms of the tangible and intangible parts of our rewards packages? So what's trending in total rewards? I want to just lay the landscape here very quickly. We're not talking about just benefits packages. We are talking about the full expanse of total rewards. That encompasses a very holistic perspective of what we're offering, not just from the tangible benefits that you see on the left-hand side of the screen here, like compensation and retirement plans, but all the way up to experiential aspects of the workforce. So things like building community within your work, offering opportunities for development and support from leadership for growth, offering opportunities for employees to feel really connected to the work that they're doing and the outcomes that their organization is driving. And what we know from all of the total rewards work that we do is that finding the right combination of benefits for every individual unique workforce is what drives the most powerful retention, the most powerful attraction. It's what deepens engagement with employees, and it is what enhances their well-being. So it's really about ensuring we're finding the right combination from each of these categories based on the individuals that we're serving within our organization. And I want to take a look at how we can do that, particularly through the lens of employees and what employees are telling us they want and need from their benefits packages, from their total rewards packages in order to thrive in their workplace. So just last year, we did a body of research to understand what it is that employers think are must-have benefits and what could be game-changing benefits if they're looking to really attract and retain talent. And at the exact same time, we ran a survey looking at employees and what they told us they needed from their workplace, what was just getting them there, but not necessarily keeping them there. And we were looking to see if there was some correlation between if employers and employees were on the same page. And I have some good news. We were on the same page about a lot of them. But let's go ahead and share what we have learned are game changers and what we have learned are essentially must-haves or expectations of the workforce. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see must-have benefits. Again, these are what employees and employers, as a matter of fact, agree must be available at any job. They are not differentiators necessarily. Just having them means that you're checking the box. But these are what employees are saying they absolutely cannot live without. We're looking at 7 must-have benefits in this current landscape. And I think you could probably name them even without looking at this. It's health insurance, dental and vision insurance, PTO and paid sick leave. Those are separated here. We know a lot of organizations are moving toward a consolidated just paid time off bucket, or some are going toward unlimited PTO. Pros and cons on both sides of those. That's not up for debate today, but just for the purpose of this body of research, these times were separated out, paid time off like vacation and paid sick leave. And then, of course, a workplace retirement match and an employer match. So these are necessary parts of your benefit strategy that employees are saying, we've got to have it, or there's no point in me working here. And if you don't offer this, I'm very likely going to be looking for or considering moving to an organization that does offer these particular list of 7 benefits. Why does it matter if we're offering these 7 benefits? So the research that we did showed that individuals who had access to all 7 of these benefits demonstrated significantly better outcomes than those who had 6 or fewer. And those outcomes that we really cared about were ones that are major strategic priorities for employers. So it was looking at benefit satisfaction. How happy are you with what your employer is offering? Does it make you feel like they care about you and are investing in you and your time? It increases job satisfaction significantly, and having access to all of these benefits also lowers burnout among the workforce. Offering them this support actually helps reduce the burnout that they are feeling at work, which we know has been a major concern for employers as well over the last several years. One thing that I want to call out in this must-have category is that the higher the quality of these offerings, the more game-changing they can actually be. So let's say, for instance, someone works for an organization, they offer an employer match, let's say 3%, pretty standard. That is checking the box, right? That's an employee expectation. But let's say that their company actually offers a 7% match. They're chatting with their friends, they find out that their friend's employer only offers 3%. Maybe they work in the same industry. The person who has access to that 7% match is going to say, actually, this is a game changer for me. This is going to keep me in this organization because they are going above and beyond in what they're offering to show that they're invested in me and my financial wellness and my success. So while these are must-have benefits, the higher the quality of these benefits, the more likely they are to drive retention, to drive attraction, and to drive those significant outcomes, those strategic outcomes rather, that employers care about, like benefit satisfaction, job satisfaction, and lower burnout. And then we looked at game-changing benefits. And we could do an entire hour on game-changing benefits because there are so many fantastic products and solutions on the market right now to help with some of these more niche needs, niche concerns that are point in time and person specific. And that really is a challenge when we're thinking about designing a program that works for an entire workforce, because things like, let's say, parental leave are extremely important to a subset of the population, a subset of your employees, but it's not something that every single employee wants you to invest in. And so we know that it's really challenging to choose a handful of game-changing benefits that the overall workforce population agrees upon. But one thing that we saw, which we thought was very, very interesting and consistent with what we're hearing from employees across the board, is that what makes something or what makes an employer game-changing is the amount of flexibility that they offer to me as or in terms of work-life benefit or work-life balance, excuse me. So the top 3 game-changing benefits that we actually saw rise to the top of the list, this was across ages, all sorts of employee demographics. It was across tenure, across industry, across role and subsets of roles. What we heard primarily from employees is that they are looking for more flexibility. They're looking for more opportunities for work-life balance. And again, to fulfill their external ambitions and personal ambitions while also giving their time and energy and effort to the work that they're doing, which hopefully is meaningful for them. 3 of these game-changing flexibility benefits that rose to the top are having remote and hybrid working organizations, or working for an organization that offers remote and hybrid working, flexible working hours. So this is especially important, I think, for as we're thinking about caregivers, having the ability, if you have to drop your kids off in the morning, to just flex an hour in the morning and come back in the evening. So being able to take the time when you need it during the day and then come back to the work. And just having that opportunity to prioritize life when necessary, but not take away from the time that they are putting in their jobs. And another very topical and timely benefit that rose to the top was compressed work weeks. So we know we're seeing a lot of research throughout the world right now, actually, on compressed work weeks, what it means to have a 4-day week and a 3-day weekend, or have 4 working days throughout the work week, and then have a little more flexibility or a day off somewhere in there. Recognizing that this is scheduling challenges, but this is a really, really hot topic among employees. And we're seeing great success from the external research reports pointing to the outcomes for these compressed work weeks, but certainly more to see and learn in this area.
I think that's so interesting that all 3 of them have to do with flexibility in some way, shape, or form, right? And maybe as a society, we're getting comfortable with the lines blurring, right, between work life. I know personally, if I have to leave to pick up my kids at 4, then I'm logging back in at night at 7 or 8, And I'd be curious your thoughts about how do you balance that, right? Because we also want to protect our employees, that the expectation is no, that you don't have to, the work doesn't have to come with you 24/7. And then maybe even a bigger challenge is within your organization, there are some roles that cannot be remote.
Yeah.
If I'm in the hospital and I need a nurse, I hope they're next to me instead of
Yeah.
like calling in, right? So
Yeah.
how do different industries where the very nature of the work is they have to be in person, how are they dealing with this sentiment?
Yeah. Well, I'll add, so from an employee perspective, when we looked at those individuals who did not have the opportunity to do their job outside of the constraints of their office or their workplace, these were not expectations. Things like remote work were not expectations. So I think that individuals who are in a job where they recognize that's just not flexibility that they'll ever be able to have and to perform the duties, they don't expect it. So I think that's a positive thing. They understand what their limitations are in the positions that they have. But there's definitely still a press for things like flexible working hours, even in terms of being able to flex with a colleague. So having shift swap options, for instance, just granting them that ability to tap into the flexibility when we can manufacture it for them, and ensuring that they recognize that an employer is committed to helping them enhance their personal life and meet their personal needs and goals and responsibilities, in addition to having expectations for them to be in the office or on the floor when they need them to be there. I hope that answers that question.
No, for sure. And I don't know if there is an answer, right?
Yeah,
It's a dialogue, right? It's a
yeah,
conversation on how are we meeting these challenges.
yeah,
In the short term, we may be meeting the need because the employee wants this and we're providing it. But in the long term, what does this do to our culture if we're all remote and then not that your culture needs to deteriorate because you're supporting your employees, but maybe you need to be more proactive and deliberate about having meaningful interactions with your employees. I mean, I see this in so many different ways. I'm in an industry in finance where finance is kind of pushing back and saying, no, we want you back in the office, right? So there are companies that are completely reconstructing their interior offices to make it a place you want to come, right?
yeah,
Because you want interaction. So there's so many different angles of this web.
Absolutely, there are. And I think it's so important that we're having the conversation around communication as well, the communication of the decisions that we're making, where there isn't flexibility that can be manufactured. It's important that employees understand why we've made the decision against offering things like remote work. Um, it's so important that we're including employees in the decision-making process and ensuring that they feel that their voice is heard and that their perspective is reflected in what we're offering. But the most important thing, and I recognize this can be really challenging, is reporting back to them why we're making changes that we are, or why we are not taking into perspective or not taking into the changes, those perspectives of employees. Sometimes that's a really hard communication to get across, but employees want to hear that their voice was heard, even if a decision was not made that they were asking for. So just really a push to ensure that your communication process and that follow-up process with your employees is top tier, because they just want to hear why the decision was made, even if it was not in their favor. And then they feel a bit more connected to and assured of the strategy of the business.
I think that's such an important point that is relevant to many aspects of, our day-to-day life. It's, whether sometimes not saying anything, you make up a story in your head as to what actually happened. And no, that's not actually what happened. So why don't you just tell them?
That's exactly it. Yep. So why do game changers, why do must-haves matter? We know that they're driving outcomes that employers care about, and employees, as a matter of fact. But we also know that folks who have access to the things that they consider game changers are more likely to be motivated to go above and beyond at work. They're more likely to say, you know what, I can flex some hours. I have the ability to focus on my personal life. I'm going to come back to my work renewed, knowing that my employer trusts me, and I'm going to come back and do better, stronger work because I had the opportunity to step away when I needed it. Employees who have these particular benefits that help them meet their life goals are more likely to give back even more in their organization. So when we're thinking about productivity, when we're thinking about engagement and high quality work, this is really a way to get at it from your benefits package, to ensure that employees feel the investment you're making in them and are reinvesting their time, energy, and talent into the organization. So let's talk a little bit about how we decide across this spectrum of total rewards. Where do we focus our efforts? Actually, one thing I want to say just before I get into this too is that while these game-changing benefits are so important at driving that goodness of going above and beyond, the majority of employees would actually prefer that their employer focus on enhancing and increasing the value of the benefits that they offer. So things like their health plan, things like their retirement plan and their match. They would rather an employer focus their effort on enhancing those existing benefits before considering adding new benefits to the lineup. So just a little plug there that if you haven't done a review of the value of the benefits that you're offering, just make sure that you are thinking about where there are opportunities to enhance the value that employees get from those must-have benefits before we're thinking about adding new things into the lineup.
Katie, I actually had a note written to make sure within the hour that I mentioned a suggestion that you should reach out to current service providers and find out what's new with them. If you haven't done that, what are they offering new customers? What can they be offering you today that they're not for the current price you're paying? I think you'll be pleasantly surprised because of all the transformative aspects of our working experience today that Katie outlined in the beginning of the conversation. Due to technology, there's just more and more to offer. I know, like, we're rolling out microsites for our 401k clients. They have their own website for the plan where it can be a hub. That was something we didn't have access to 12 or 18 months ago. And it makes our job easier in some ways because we can communicate more effectively. So really, I would encourage you to just have a check-in call with all of your service providers. I absolutely love this visual here, Katie, and I would encourage maybe some of our HR friends on the call to pirate something like this. I mean, I think you could use something like this with employees. Like
Yeah.
this is our philosophy about total rewards, and this we are looking to build this hierarchy. We need to give you a solid base. And we're going to build on that so that we're meeting your needs financially, mentally, physically, all of that. So
Yeah.
kudos to you and your team for this. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. And to your point, I think this is a great way to show the investment that you're making in your benefits packages to your employees, to show them, yes, we are investing in you through compensation, through bonuses, through equity if we offer it. But look at all of these areas that we're thinking about that we know are meaningful to you. And we've got the bases covered for the foundation. We've got a strong, solid foundation for you, but we are thinking about these top tier issues. We're thinking about going above and beyond for you and showcasing in a graphic similar to this, just what benefits are offered that align to these higher priority focus areas that we know are of increasing importance for employees across the board. Again, across age, across tenure, across gender, et cetera. Employees across all demographics are really thinking about these top tier priorities like the experiential benefits, the work-life balance, and those really meaningful strategic or point in time benefits.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of clients are offering like putting together a total reward statement for each
yeah,
employee. But that's a huge lift. That's
yeah,
a tremendous amount of work. It can be interpreted the wrong way. I didn't make that amount, and they see this big number. Well, no, but that's the value of all the services when you put it together. I think if you're not doing a total reward statement, this is a great like first step into communicating total rewards without committing to that project.
absolutely. A great point. So just to touch on Healy's here quickly, so we've got our foundational benefits of compensation, looking beyond just broad-based kind of wage growth, how are employers offering competitive salaries, competitive programs, financial programs to attract talent. And we know there's a lot of organizations that are feeling, again, the strain of not being able to rise or raise wages, but looking for ways that they can continue adding value and showing that they're investing. And that's really where we move into these top tier areas of experiential benefits and work-life balance. I loved your point about just reaching out to your vendors, making sure that you are getting the best deal and that you're getting everything that they have to offer. I think this is especially important in the health space, as we're thinking about the cost of healthcare that is increasing so substantially, both for employers and employees, and how do we offset those costs? But also, how do we make sure that if we are investing this much in the health benefits that we are offering, how do we ensure that employees are taking advantage of every aspect of that? So lots of folks moving, lots of organizations moving to areas like healthcare navigation through higher touch support vendors that are really giving employees a way to cut through the noise and the confusion of health benefits and make it easier to navigate so that they can use those benefits available to them. And looking at programs beyond just physical health into, as we touched on earlier, mental and emotional support, beyond just EAPs and what those offer to employees. From the strategic benefits piece here right in the middle, this again, it's super idiosyncratic. It really is very dependent upon the needs and the point in time of your workforce. So things like tuition reimbursement and student loan repayment, this is just an area I want to touch on very quickly because there's some really interesting insights here, particularly around baby boomers. So if you're not aware, more than 1 in 10 baby boomers has student debt. But this group of boomers actually has the highest average student debt balance across all other generations, primarily as a result of taking out loans for children or grandchildren. So this student debt kind of burden that we're feeling is not just limited to the younger employees. It is really across generation now. It is across employees. The average student debt payment is about $500 a month. And I think it was about more than 2/3 of folks with student debt said that their debt and their debt repayment hinders them from saving for retirement or achieving other financial goals. So a really important area to be focusing on. But in addition to that, this is an area where things like emergency savings and helping to build up some short-term savings comes into play. And really some of these new innovative benefits that are helping to meet point in time needs and challenges that the workforce is experiencing now. We've touched pretty heavily on work-life balance, so I won't go into much detail there, but then just thinking about, again, those experiential benefits, I've got some good news on this, this piece of the puzzle. These are often cost-neutral strategies. So if you are thinking about how do I do more with less, how do I add more positive experience into the workplace, into the total rewards package without having to write another check, this is an area that you'd want to lean into. Wouldn't recommend jumping right there if we don't already have a solid foundation, if we haven't reviewed the quality of our offerings in that foundational category. But if you feel confident about your compensation, your health and wealth, some of those strategic benefits, think about incorporating some experiential benefits. Think about your professional development programs, how you are fostering and building community within your workforce, the culture that you are creating within your workforce, and how connected individuals feel to the work that they're doing and what that means for what the organization is delivering. So understanding the impact of what they're doing. So again, it's not zero cost, but likely we've already got some folks in HR, in talent, in leadership who are developing these areas and invested in these areas, just pushing a little further to ensure that we're very intentional about buffing up these areas of experiential benefits is where you can find some of those cost neutral strategies that really help employees feel connected and go above and beyond at work. All right, and finally, let's just talk about some of the things we are excited about. No one is excited when they hear the word Secure 2.0. I think we can just level set there.
We're over it. We've talked about it so much, but there's still so much to do.
Still so much to do. But we're moving past the implementation phase, and now we're actually starting to feel excited about some of the provisions that are available and what that means for financial wellness and employee outcomes. So a couple of things that Fidelity is really thinking about, hopefully is on your mind as well, thinking about super catch-up contributions, allowing individuals who are inching toward retirement to really start focusing very heavily on ensuring they've got enough saved and amping up their contributions as they get closer to retirement. Student debt, as we touched upon, that is impacting the workforce across all demographics, across all generations. Really excited about what it means that employers can help student debt holders balance paying off those loans while also starting to save for their long-term retirement goals. Auto portability is such a hot topic. As we talk about plan leakage, we're often talking about loans and withdrawals, but I think it's also important to recognize that when an employer switches their job, 60% of employees who switch jobs take out some or cash out all of their retirement accounts when they leave that job.
Goodness, that's painful. That's just tough to hear.
Yes, it absolutely is. So when we're thinking about preservation of long-term wealth and retirement security, this is a really crucial part of the conversation to ensure that we are preserving that in a retirement account and affording those individuals the ability to save and think about the long term. And then, of course, just right back to what I think most of employee well-being hinges on, which is emergency savings and the ability to offer out-of-plan emergency savings accounts that are able to be utilized by folks across all income levels, across all ages and demographics and eligibility levels. And it's a portable account that allows folks to really start saving for the now and allows employers the ability to kick in a little here and there in terms of incentives to get folks really thinking about how they can keep themselves above water now so that they can focus on long-term priorities. And then, of course, we've got our Roth catch-up contributions, which we're really excited about the opportunity for the tax savings there. And Kristen, I know you want to talk about this. for
Yeah,
most.
this is actually a requirement. This isn't one of those optional provisions, and it's going to take some coordination with your payroll and your record keeper. So this is definitely like a priority for the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter. And it's a communication, I would say requirement, but if we view it as an opportunity, we could have the chance uh, to really encourage and let people know about additional benefits. And what I mean by that is that if you make more than $145,000 in 2025, then 2026, if you're over the age of 50, your catch-up contribution needs to be made in the form of a Roth. So what does a Roth do? A Roth, you actually have reduced tax savings next year, but that money grows tax exempt. Well, for those folks, if you offer a deferred compensation plan, this could be a great opportunity as you're preparing for the enrollment period for your deferred compensation plan for your highly comps, or for those eligible, and you're probably doing that in the October, November time period. This is an important footnote for them to know that, you could have $7,500 to over $11,000 that you were deferring this year that is not going to be deferrable next year. So this could be an opportunity to get people to re-engage on your deferred comp plan, and really to think about where and when and how they are saving in each of these programs.
An excellent point. All right. That brings me to the end of Fidelity's research overview. So Kristen, I'll turn it to you if you want to talk a little bit more about what this means for the folks on the call.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of really good information. We have some actionable ideas or really themes that maybe you want to prioritize, or probably more important is to get your peers, and your the leaders in your organization to get behind. I like to think about connecting the dots for employees, right? Because if we talk about your benefits and that you have a 401k, you have a medical plan, like those seven must-have benefits, in many ways they're taken for granted, right? Because they are must have. We have to have them. If we start to talk about what they do for you, they allow you to make progress on your personal financial journeys. They allow you to mitigate risk. Then by changing the conversation, perhaps we can get people more engaged and also a greater appreciation for their offerings. So I really do encourage you to think about how your employees are receiving information. You can actually communicate a benefits program that is custom to different generations, or different life stages, without actually having to have a dozen different benefits programs, right? It's just what are you reinforcing where? We talked about health savings accounts. We talked a lot about emergency savings, but at the end of the day, your employees really want someplace to go to talk about their financial struggles. Katie definitely hit on this. I was floored to learn in the last couple of years that financial health and wellness is actually something you can find on WebMD right now. It's something that the Columbia University Medical Center is researching. What is the impact of your confidence in your financial plan? How does that tie to your physical health? And one of the early findings is that you don't have to have all your financial challenges solved. You need to not feel helpless. You need to have a plan. You don't have to have everything done, but you need to have confidence that if I do A, B, and C, I'm going to be better off than where I am today. That feeling of hopelessness is what really accelerates and snowballs the financial challenges with health challenges. So if you can go to the next slide. We will be sharing this deck, 4 actionable ideas to improve employee financial wellness, meeting employees where they are and really, really talking to them in terms that make sense to them. Perhaps that means asking some questions and listening to what their challenges are. What I like to do is to work with clients to identify, either in title or function, who are the leaders within your organization and how do we make them ambassadors for your benefits program? Because oftentimes your employees, they don't want to talk to a third party. They may not feel comfortable talking to someone they've never met, but they might feel comfortable asking a question to their manager or their coworker. So how do we get those pillars within the organization that really have an empathetic ear and are comfortable and understand what is offered. We don't want to put them in a position where they have to give advice. Not that, but at least to direct someone where to go if they need help on a particular topic. Chances are you're probably offering more than the employee realizes. You can be using thoughtful design to nudge employees in the right direction. We've talked about automatic enrollment, auto increase. That used to be revolutionary. Now it's expected or customary. How do we go above and beyond that? We talked a lot about helping navigate and meeting cash needs. And I just say anecdotally, when I started as an advisor over 20 years ago, the idea of talking to employees about assets outside the 401k was like voodoo, privacy, like that was you. At one point, you weren't even allowed to ask those questions or to offer services like that. And now the table has really turned, and now it's expected. It's that employees are looking to their employer for financial literacy. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I think that the foundation of financial literacy should come way earlier. But in the absence of some dramatic change, the employer oftentimes is the first place employees are actually getting some type of education, and that's a responsibility and an opportunity as well to engage and get some loyalty there. And then making sure that your benefits are competitive, which brings me back to talk to your vendors and ask what they can do for you. And we'll wrap up with a couple of actionable slides. And this is with the lens of like going into September 401k day. Here is a sample financial wellness curriculum. I know it's a little dense and maybe a little tactical, but you could grab one or two and ask your vendors, can you do something with this? And then what I really love is the next slide. We've been working with clients to put together a financial wellness checklist that's custom to your organization. So this here is somewhat generic about ways to make improvements, looking at your cash flow, debt, risk, savings, and an overall approach to your workday. But we work with clients to customize it for their specific benefits. So if you were able to take the hierarchy of total rewards that Katie outlined and pull out some things that require the employee to do something proactive and throw it on a checklist and share it with employees, wow, that's something that they can point to. It's something you could use with new hires. Just like I'm challenging you to take one or two actionable ideas from this conversation today, you could challenge your employees. What one or two things off this checklist are you going to accomplish over the next 6 to 12 months? It makes this modular. It makes the idea of planning for retirement approachable, right? That seems such a big task. But let's break it down into bite-sized pieces and knock it off really one step at a time. We are at time. If you had, I know there's been some questions that we've attempted to answer throughout. Katie has been very generous with the information she shared, and we have a QR code here to the Fidelity Insights site that you can grab additional information on topics. If you want to go deep on emergency savings, they've got lots on that. If you'd like to talk about how this applies to your organization, you can schedule a consultation with myself or one of my colleagues across the country at Raymond James through the QR code, and certainly feel free to reach out to me directly, connect on LinkedIn. We'd love to continue the conversation. Um, this is a program that I would love, Katie, for you and I or to do in person with a panel someday, right? Because I think that as valuable as Fidelity's insights are to the HR profession, as Fidelity well knows and Raymond James knows, HR's insights is just as valuable. And I'm sure that you all have lots of ideas about the topics that we've discussed today. And we just thank you for your positivity, for your desire to learn, for your engagement. And, it's really important. You're advocating for your employees, and that's at the end of the day, going to make your organization a better place to work. So thank you for that, Katie. Thank you for your time today. And I hope, here we are, it's August 21st. I hope everyone has a good end of the summer, and feel free to reach out if you got questions. Take care,
Thank you
everybody.
so much for your time.
Thanks, Katie.